I'm Kylie Steyn. I'm one of the co-authors on the USB Ed South African Management Index, and I'm here at the We Read For You session presenting the results of the index. An edited version of the presentation follows. I just want to give some background to the survey for those of you who are not familiar with the survey. The first USB Ed Management Index we launched in 2013, and that was closely aligned with the Astridge Management Index, which was run in the UK on an annual basis. Then we ran a second survey in November 2014, where we expanded on the findings from the first survey. And this current survey is our third survey, and we've renamed it the South African Management Index. Just a description of the sample. We launched the survey in November of last year, and we received responses from 1,228 managers across South Africa. And as I said, that represents our largest survey to date. 63% of the managers that we included in our survey represent organisations from the private sector, and 38% occupy senior management positions. All managers across sectors in South Africa are represented, with a majority representing organisations in the financial intermediation and manufacturing sectors. 56% of the managers that we surveyed this year are male, and 70% are white, and the majority represent organisations in Gauteng, followed by the Western Cape, and then KwaZulu-Natal. When we compare the surveys from the first survey to the most recent survey, we see that there's pretty much equal representation of public sector, private sector managers in the survey. We've seen this year a greater percentage of women participate in the survey, which is great. Unfortunately, our survey is still not representative of our Black, coloured and Indian population groups, and that's something that I think we're going to try and rectify in the next survey. We've explored the current management, organisational and personal challenges facing South African managers. We examined managerial and organisational responses to change and transformation in organisations. We looked at perspectives on diversity management and inclusion. We looked at levels of organisational pride and commitment among managers in South African organisations. And then quite a large component of the survey looked at approaches to organisational learning and development, with specific reference to leadership development and the leadership pipeline. And then we looked at managerial responses to innovation objectives in South African organisations. And that was a new set of questions that we included in this year's survey. We can all agree that 2015 proved to be quite a difficult year for the South African economy. It comes therefore as no surprise that 65% of managers feel that their organisations are suffering in the current economic climate. But despite this general level of pessimism, almost 82% are of the opinion that their organisations are well placed to survive and thrive. And 67% of the managers that we surveyed believe that their organisations have maintained employee motivation and engagement during the current economic downturn. Over 90% of the managers that we surveyed are proud to be working for their organisations, and over 80% still intend to be working for their organisations in 2 years' time. Almost 3/4 of our respondents agreed that top leadership in their organisation is effective and provides direction. And again, almost 3/4 believe that top leaders in their organisations are trustworthy. Public sector managers are, however, significantly less likely than private sector managers to regard top leaders in their organisations as trustworthy. Of concern also, and it was also a concern in previous surveys, is the fact that almost half of our respondents feel that top leadership in their organisations are not spending sufficient time communicating with staff and are not communicating clearly with staff. We also looked at perceptions of organisational trust in this survey, as we did with previous surveys, and we've seen quite a steep decline in terms of perceptions of organisational trust in this current survey. In 2013, we saw almost 63% of managers agreeing that a strong culture of trust exists in their organisation, compared with only 51% in 2015. So that's quite a sharp decline. Again, as with previous surveys, the successful management of change continues to be a challenge for South African managers. Despite the fact that over 90% of the managers that we surveyed regard leading and managing change as an important aspect of their roles and responsibilities, only 66% believe that top leaders in their organizations have the skills that they need to lead change well. Almost all the managers that participated in the survey view innovation as an opportunity for their organizations to differentiate themselves from their competitors. While 78% of the respondents confirm that innovation objectives appear in their organization's business plans, less than 70% believe that their organizations have the right skills, processes, and environments to ensure innovation success. But generally, if we look at innovation objectives, quite positive. We all know that appropriate work-life balance is an essential ingredient to foster well-being at work. 62% of the managers that we surveyed are satisfied with their work-life balance, and over 90% say that they are able to cope with the pressures and stress of their work. As reported with our previous surveys, women managers report significantly lower levels of satisfaction with their work-life balance when compared with their male counterparts, and they're also less likely to be able to express themselves authentically at work. Interestingly, almost 70% of the managers surveyed believe that their organizations have sufficient leadership talent to address the current challenges facing the organization, but less than 60% feel that their organizations have sufficient leadership talent to address the future needs of the organization. And this may be due to the fact that almost 40% of managers surveyed believe that their organizations are not doing enough to develop the next generation of leaders. Now, this is not unique to the South African context. Globally, we're seeing a leadership capability gap. Of the managers that we surveyed, 5.3% have been in their current positions for less than a year, and we asked them to indicate to what extent they feel that they've adjusted to their new positions. So while over 90% maintain that they have successfully adjusted to their new positions, almost half feel that their organizations did not provide them with the support that they needed in order to transition into their new roles. We see that South African managers regard the opportunity to continually learn and develop skills and knowledge and challenging, interesting work as their top motivators. Working for an organization that takes social and environmental issues seriously, receiving regular feedback on performance, and working for a leading organization were regarded as the least important motivators. Unfortunately, our data also shows, and it's showed this in previous surveys, that many South African organizations might be out of touch with what is motivating their staff. We differentiated our sample into 3 generations, namely the millennials, who are managers that are younger than 35, the Generation Xers, who at the time of the survey are managers between 35 and 50, and then the baby boomers, who are managers that were older than 50. And we tried to discern the differences in terms of what motivates the different generations at work. While all 3 generations ranked the opportunity to continually learn and develop my skills and knowledge and challenging, interesting work as important motivators, the millennial managers also regarded clear career advancement as an important motivator. The older baby boomer generation differ from their younger counterparts by including the authority and freedom to run my own show and knowing my decisions have an impact in the organization as their top 5, as 2 of their top 5 motivators. The majority of the managers that we surveyed are quite positive about their organization's efforts and top leadership in their organization's efforts to foster a diversity-friendly environment, yet only 53.3% of the managers indicated that their organizations are offering training to manage diversity in the workplace. In terms of learning and development opportunities in South African organizations, we found consistently in our 3 surveys that South African organizations can definitely do more in terms of learning and development and leadership development opportunities. So while almost 90% of the managers that we surveyed are confident that they will be able to handle the challenges of the future effectively, Only 52% believe that sufficient time is allocated to their learning and development needs. Women managers also report significantly less opportunities for learning and development than their male counterparts. Our survey also points to the fact that South African organisations are not investing sufficient energy and attention into the team learning and development needs. We asked our managers to rank the top 5 skills that they believe a manager should possess in order to be effective. Coaching and developing others was regarded as the most important skill a manager should possess, followed by strategic thinking and developing strong networks and partnerships. Managing conflict, managing a diverse workforce, and stress management were regarded as the least important skills that a manager should possess. Managers generally regarded themselves as effective across all the competencies, but least competent in areas of conflict management and stress management. According to the managers that participated in our survey, their organisations make the most use of in-company courses run by in-company trainers, open enrolment courses run by external providers, and then thirdly, customised courses run by external providers. Internal coaching appears to be a popular approach to learning and development in South African organisations, with just over 60% of managers saying that they have received internal coaching in the last 12 months. Only 41% report that they have received external coaching over the last 12 months. All approaches to learning and development were regarded as effective, but customised courses run by external providers were rated as the most effective learning and development programs, followed by qualification programs. If we look at the key differences between the first survey and the most recent survey, we can conclude that managers that participated in this year's survey are less optimistic that their organisations will be able to weather the current economic climate. Slightly lower levels of organisational pride and commitment in this year's survey as compared to the first survey, although we must remember that those levels of organisational pride and commitment are still relatively high. And we've also seen a significant decline in perceptions of organisational trust, especially amongst public sector managers. If we look at the strengths that we've identified within the organisational context in South Africa, we can clearly see that there's a great deal of confidence in organisations' innovation objectives. Challenges for South African organisations, if they do wish to remain competitive, is that they're going to have to start developing interventions aimed at ensuring higher levels of organisational trust. They're going to have to look at ways to improve communication, especially top leadership communication down towards employees. And then they're going to have to look at implementing interventions aimed at improving change management in their organisations. Leadership development, I've already mentioned, we're going to have to look at interventions aimed at leadership development for the millennial employees, as well as leadership development and learning and development opportunities for women managers, because women managers reported significantly less opportunities to learn and develop than their male counterparts. And then we also need to look at the gender disparities with regards to work-life balance and authenticity, as women managers are reporting significantly lower levels of satisfaction with their work-life balance, with their well-being, and with their authenticity. Going forward, we've got a nice set of data spanning 3 years in terms of managers' perceptions of organisational trends in South Africa. So I think what we would like to do in the coming year, I think we're only going to run the survey in 2 years from now, is to really interrogate this data and to determine what are the drivers of some of these trends that we're seeing. And then also, we did it with our first survey. We interviewed some experts in the field, but hopefully with our next survey is to do some qualitative interviews with managers in South Africa in order to try and explain some of the trends that we're seeing. So those are our plans for the future, but we obviously would welcome any recommendations or any suggestions. Thank you.